all these seemingly little things make a huge difference to the people who are locked up for years in prison and often feel that the world has forgotten about them and in fact doesn't want to know. The title of this workshop is very real for me as I see firsthand the positive effects of having a visitor in prison. My name is Sister Mary Hanrahan. I'm a presentation sister and I work as a prison chaplain in Arbour Hill Prison in Dublin. And for my workshop, I want to invite you to come on a journey with me beyond the gates of the prison and to meet the people whom I work with on a daily basis. And I think it will make a huge difference to you in your attitude perhaps to those who have offended and broken the law, and to meet the human beings behind the prison gates. My favourite saint is a saint in the making, my foundress, Nano Nagel. She has been beatified and is on the road, we hope, towards canonisation. Maybe in order to let you know, first of all, what inspired me to actually work as a prison chaplain, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the saint in the making whom I already mentioned, Nano Nagel, our founder. Nano lived in Ireland in the 18th century, and she was a real pioneer in her day. Defying the penal laws, she went out on a limb to answer what she saw as the greatest need of her time, which was the education of poor Catholic children. Nano herself came from a privileged background, and she began her education in the hedge schools of her parish, and later on she actually went to finishing school in Paris in France. When she returned to Cork, she was appalled at the number of young children that ran wild on the streets of her city. Fearless and stubborn, she used her fortune to set up what she called her little schools. She set them up in secret, and in order to safeguard the future of her schools, she began our congregation on Christmas Eve, 1775. And for the past 225 years, Presentation Sisters have continued the work of education, spreading from small beginnings of just 4 founding sisters to every continent in the world. Today, we number over 2,000 members, and we can be found in every country. We are now involved in education at all levels, healthcare in hospitals and communities, pastoral work, community work, chaplaincy, social finance, working with migrants and refugees. In fact, the list of ministries is endless. Nana worked in her schools by day, but at night she could be found going by the light of a lantern to visit the families of her children, especially those who are sick, and also to visit the jail in Cork. And as you can imagine, jails in the 18th century were not pleasant places to visit or to be in. When I was invited by my congregation, actually 7 years ago, to consider prison ministry, I thought of Nano, and I felt a definite call to be with those whom most people want to forget about. Unfortunately, they lock them up and throw away the key mentality is alive and well in our society today. Having never been inside a prison, I had absolutely no idea what I was taking on, or more importantly, if I would be of any service to people whom the state had seen fit to lock up. Originally, my congregation asked me to research working with the families of prisoners, as these are often the forgotten ones who hide away because of the shame of their loved ones' mistakes. My research took me to talk to many different people and groups who are in contact with those who are affected by crime and addictions of all sorts. But I found it difficult to actually meet family members of those in prison. A wise person told me, Mary, if you really want to meet the family members, then you need to meet the prisoner. With this in mind, I volunteered my time as a prison chaplain in 2013, and to use a cliche, the rest is history. I will never forget spending a day walking through one of our big prisons with one of our sisters who at the time was a serving chaplain herself, and feeling at the end of the day that I could never do as she did. However, I volunteered for 3 years in Arbour Hill Prison, which is a remand prison catering for those in Dublin and the greater Leinster area who have been remanded in custody. I found my tribe in the prison, and after the first week of adjusting to security checks and gates and keys, knew that I had found a ministry which felt right for me as a daughter of Nanonegin. Then, in order to qualify for a job in the prison, I needed to return to college and to do a master's in chaplaincy studies and pastoral work. I completed this master's in DCU in 2016, and that very month I was offered a permanent post in Arbour Hill Prison. I feel so blessed and privileged to be able to go into a prison each day and share the lives of the prisoners and the wider prison community. My role as chaplain is to be a listening, supportive faith presence to people, men and women of all faiths and none. Presence is probably the most important word in a chaplain's life, because by our very presence, we are saying, you are worthwhile. I want to be here inside these gates with you. Your story and your journey are important to me, and I want to share that with you and to support you in whatever way I can. One elderly man who's serving a life sentence once said to me, I don't have to talk to you, I don't even have to see you, Mary, but to know that you are in the building gives me the confidence to get through my day. In fact, he told me, I love to hear your voice as you talk to the others, and I love the sound of your laughter. If I were to be asked what is the greatest gift I have given to these men in my care, it would have to be the gift of a smile and a cheerful greeting. I have been told by a member of staff that I bring a light into a grey place. And I am humbled because the gift which I carry and the light which I carry, I have been given from the one who accompanies me each day on my journey. I often ask myself how I could bring a glum face into a prison setting where there is already so much quiet, hidden pain and shame hidden behind those heavy steel doors. You might wonder, what do I do all day inside the prison, and how do I get to communicate with the men? All our prisons are slightly different in how they operate, and I can only answer that question from my present position in Arbour Hill Prison. Arbour Hill is a prison with approximately 135 male prisoners, the majority of which have been convicted of sexual offences and are serving a determinate sentence. We also have about 25 men who are serving life sentences, which means that they would hope to be released on licence into the community after 18 plus years. In fact, very few are released after 18 years, and our longest serving man has served over 40 years. Can you imagine being locked up away from your loved ones for that length of time, or indeed for any length of time? This man has told me that one thing he would love to be able to do is to sit in a restaurant and actually decide what he would like to eat. Having been served prison food for 40 years, this is no surprise and is something which is outside of our imaginings. Rather than bringing you through the timetable of a typical day in the life of a prison chaplain, and there are seldom 2 days which are the same, I want to share some of the life events which I have been part of, and in that way, I think you will get a glimpse of this privileged ministry. Prison is not always grim and depressing. In fact, we have many moments of lightness and joy. In summer 2019, our men performed Brendan Behan's The Quare Fella for family and invited guests over 2 nights. This was the result of many months of hard work on the part of the men and the producer, as well as all those who worked behind the scenes, building sets, catering, etc., which was all done in-house by the men and the staff. Having President Higgins and his wife Sabina as guests of honour on the first night was a truly wonderful experience for the whole prison community, and the men on stage were overwhelmed when the President and his wife requested to meet them during the interval. We were all on a high for weeks after this occasion, and I have no doubt that it was a huge confidence builder for so many men who would never have dreamt of treading the boards in front of an audience. We celebrate Christmas and Easter by holding concerts in the school which showcase the musical and artistic talents, and of course our Christmas carol service, Christmas morning mass are very special occasions. And while they are definitely tinged with loneliness for family members and what could be, the prison community makes the most of the situation by helping each other to get through the days in as positive a fashion as possible. Sunday is my favourite day in the prison because we come together to celebrate Mass. We are lucky to have a lovely little church within the prison where we gather to break the word and the bread together. We are also lucky to have regular celebrants who can relate really well with the men and to consider it privilege to celebrate the sacraments in the prison context. We have a lovely choir, and an elderly sister who is a liturgist chooses the hymns which are apt for the particular Sunday or season of the year, and this greatly enhances our celebration. After Mass, we have a cuppa and a chat together, and then another voluntary group called the Release Prison Partnership come in and do some scripture workshops with the men. On a Thursday evening, I offer an hour of quiet reflection and adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. And again, as we gather as a community, we relish the time to be together, to pray for our needs and the needs of the world, and to worship our God in the silence of the evening. As I mentioned, the school in the prison is a very positive place where the men are helped to develop their skills and talents as well as their academics. We had men involved in basic literacy programs. The toe-to-toe program is a wonderful innovation where one inmate will teach another how to read on a one-to-one basis, meeting for half an hour each day. At the other end of the scale, as well as having people sitting junior cert and leaving cert exams, we have a number of students pursuing degrees with the Open University. Having often fallen behind due to a number of factors in their initial education, these men are hungry for knowledge, and the satisfaction of achievement at even the most basic of levels works wonders for their confidence and equips them to be more fully members of society on release. The mission statement of the prison service talks about rehabilitation, and it is through all these activities and also personal development and therapeutic programs that this rehabilitation takes place. Probably one of the most rewarding experiences of my time as a prison chaplain was accompanying two of our men as they sought to restore relationships with family members. This restorative justice process was very carefully managed by the probation service, and the end result was to have a profound effect on the two men in question. I cannot account for the people involved on the other side, but I know that both individuals were happy to be able to hear what the family members had to say to them, and to be able to say sorry face to face brought them a certain level of freedom, while it in no way negated the damage which was done. In fact, it probably brought home the impact of their offending behaviour by having the courage to hear the impact of their actions and to be able to face the pain in their loved ones was only possible for both of these men through the power of prayer and trust that they were not alone in the meeting, but were secure in the knowledge that God was with them and would see them through. Many days are brightened in prison when a man receives a letter from a loved one after perhaps years of silence and misunderstanding. The delicate threads of connection begin to come together, and often as a chaplain, I had the joy of being a bridge builder. It is a clear statistic that people who leave prison with no family support on the outside are far more likely to reoffend. And so the fostering and supporting of family connections and visits is a very important role for the chaplain. There are also sadly many dark days for women and men behind the prison walls. And I suppose the darkest of all of these days is when somebody who's locked up hears the death of a loved one. Breaking this news is one of the hardest tasks of being a chaplain, as you know that the person may not have seen or spoken to the deceased for weeks, months, or years, and may have to now say goodbye from a distance and live with guilt and unresolved grief and loss. Without doubt, this is the most challenging part of my ministry. And you know, prison is often not a safe place to show your vulnerability and weakness, and therefore keeping a stoic outward appearance while your heart is breaking inside can take a huge toll on a person. I have organised regular bereavement support groups, and I've seen firsthand the way in which, given the opportunity and the safe space, these men are able to speak about their loss and begin the slow journey of healing. Accompanying a young father as he witnessed the life support machine being turned off on his 14-year-old daughter, who had died tragically, is an experience which will never leave me. I thought my heart would break for the grief and pain in the hospital room, and yet I knew I had to stay strong to be able, in some small way, help this man in my care to navigate his journey. 1 year later, I can say that he is doing okay, but I worry for what will happen when he finally gets to visit his daughter's grave and tries to rebuild his life on the outside. Grief is often delayed in prison, and the impact of delayed grief can be very complicated for an entire family. As Shakespeare said, give sorrow words, the grief that does not speak whispers the o'erwrought heart and bids it break. This opportunity to speak sorrow and to have it heard and respected is one of the greatest gifts which a chaplain working in a prison can give to his or her people. As chaplains, we're expected to visit our people when they're in hospitals or nursing homes, and once again, this is a place where we can bring solace and comfort, and if appropriate, where we can pray with the sick person. Making this journey with one of our staff who sustained a brain injury in a fall brought me from his bedside, where he was on life support machine with little hope of recovery, to walking the grounds of the rehabilitation hospital with him months later. Today, we are eagerly awaiting his return to work. Regular calls, originally to his family and later to himself, brought us to a place of joy and thanksgiving for his healing. As chaplains, we're there for the whole prison community, and so as well as being there in times of bereavement and illness with colleagues, I have been called on to plan wedding ceremonies and have witnessed the taking of vows in the most joyful of circumstances. Due to serving very long sentences and the nature of the offences, some of our men in Arbour Hill would have very little family contact and very little family members to support them in maybe their last days of life. I've had the privilege of accompanying some of our men in their final days, and indeed have planned and sometimes delivered their funeral services. I've not done this lightly, as over time I've grown fond of the people in my care, And each time I've had to say a final goodbye, it has been a loss for me also. It is heartbreaking to have no loved one at the bedside of a dying person, or only 2 or 3 at a funeral service. But this is the harsh reality for a lot of people, and a lot more people than we might imagine. In fact, I want to share with you that on Good Friday this year, one of our men dropped dead from a heart attack, just dropped suddenly dead. And as midday approached, I found myself kneeling on his cell floor, praying with him as he passed away. Ironically, the previous evening, this man had asked me for a copy of the Stations of the Cross to pray the following day. Because of COVID, we didn't have any ceremonies. He was, in fact, to face his own Calvary with Jesus, in whom he trusted, and to say his final words on his own Good Friday. I have to tell you, I made very different Stations of the Cross myself that Good Friday. And as I rang his family to break the news of his sudden death, I could only picture the women weeping on the way of the cross. As you will hear from what I've been sharing, much of my work as chaplain is about accompaniment and present. I'm also involved in planning programs. Sometimes in association with the school, we have run programs for staff and prisoners, facilitated by people from the sanctuary. I try to respond appropriately to whatever I glean to be the need of the men at a given time. Sometimes this is bereavement support, sometimes maybe spiritual input, addiction support. And I try to find programs or people who can help the men in these journeys, either individually or sometimes in small groups. Within the prison, we have our own psychologists who run the therapy programs, either in small groups or one-to-one. And I have a psychotherapist who tides a half day each week to counsel men who are unable to avail of the psychological service. Another retired lady, who is a psychoanalyst, offers a listening ear to a family member who is in a lot of distress. As a prison community, we are always looking for people and ways and skills who are able to supplement what we have ourselves within the prison. In Arbour Hill, we're really lucky to have a number of organisations who come in to help on a regular basis. The St. Vincent de Paul Society also provide practical support to some of our needy men, and they come in each Saturday morning to meet with the men at their request. All these seemingly little things make a huge difference to the people who are locked up for years in prison and often feel that the world has forgotten about them and in fact doesn't want to know. The title of this workshop is very real for me, as I see firsthand the positive effects of having a visitor in prison. I'm very lucky to have a number of people who have volunteered to visit some of the men who have no family visits. It's a delight on the face of the man who is all dressed up and eagerly awaiting his visit, and the happiness of being able to share the news with me afterwards is always heartwarming. And indeed, this is not only on the side of the prisoner, but so many times the visitor has talked about all that he or she has received from the visit. So the mutual support and interest in each other has opened up new worlds on both sides of the prison walls. In 2018, which was the year of the family, I already mentioned another sister who had worked as a prison chaplain, and both of us were really interested in doing something for the family members. So the year of the family, we decided that we'd actually really look at doing something together. And we set up a new service called New Directions. And it's still being developed, and we'll try to respond to the needs of family members. We have employed 2 counsellors who work with family members in distress. And we were very lucky. We talked to the Archbishop of Dublin at the time, and we asked him, because it was the year of the family, would they have a property maybe that we could use for this ministry? And the Archbishop pointed us in the direction of a number of properties, and one property was very suitable, and we now have that on lease from the Dublin Diocese. So we're very grateful to the Dublin Diocese for coming in with us on this project. And as well as providing a counselling service, our base house provides a space where neutral visits can take place from the prison. And a neutral visit is when a prisoner, usually someone serving maybe a life sentence, is granted day release to spend with his family. So the family members can come to the house. The prisoner is brought, always accompanied by 3 prison guards, and they can spend time together there in the house. It's a lovely, homely, warm setting. There's food provided, there's a lovely garden, so they can have as normal a family time as possible together there. And these days, as you could imagine, are very precious for the prisoner and his family. And they're very often the building bricks towards eventual release and reintegration. But we're continuing to develop new directions, and we're currently working on making our website a resource for family members. So watch this space as we continue to develop in response to the needs. And it's not around what we think the family members want, but they can ring up, they talk to Sister Imelda, they tell their story, and then we try to respond appropriately to that family. So just keep watching this space. We'll continue to develop, and we'd be really interested in maybe what other people think of what we provide as well. And maybe there are people out there listening who would also feel, I have a skill, I have something that I might be able to offer to New Directions to help some family members that have people in prison.
Yeah, I'm just delighted to hear it has been such a success. And like that, me personally, I'm sure there's so many more who just don't think of the prisoners as, or what we could do maybe to help out. Like what your ministry you're doing is so incredible and so inspiring. So I'm sure there's so many people listening in who will be inspired by your talk today.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, Sister Mary, is there anywhere when we're finished this workshop today we could look up any books or podcasts or videos or anywhere we could go to learn even more about this topic?
There indeed, Lisa. I could just maybe, if I can mention a few websites.
Yeah, go on ahead.
And there are lots of links from these websites to other very good sites and areas where you get lots of information. So first of all, let me give a plug for New Directions, our own project. So our website is obviously www.familiesofprisoners.ie. Very simple. So if you go onto that site, you'll get lots of other links. Then another wonderful organisation in Ireland is the Irish Penal Reform Trust. So again, their website is just iprt.ie, and they do wonderful research around needs of prisoners, families, children of prisoners. So it's a very worthwhile website. And of course, I have to mention the website of the Irish Prison Service, which is irishprisonservice.ie, where again, there's lots and lots of information and lots of links where you can find other information.
So just before we're coming near the end of our workshop today, unfortunately, Sister Mary, but you had spoke about maybe ending with a poem or reciting a poem.
Yes, I have a little poem that maybe people are familiar with. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the poet and writer John O'Donoghue, who sadly passed away a few years ago. And I just have this poem, and I feel it beautifully captures the plight of the prisoner, but it's also a prayer. It's a prayer which offers that there's hope, that there's new life at the end of a prison sentence. And as you listen, maybe some of what I've shared will come back to you as you listen to this poem. And I would ask you also to include those in custody and their families in your prayers. I want to thank you for taking up my invitation to come behind the doors of the prison with me. That's a brave decision to make. And I hope that in listening, your heart has been softened somewhat towards those in prison, and that it has maybe changed you in some small way. And maybe when you go back again and read Matthew 25, maybe it will come alive more for you also. So this is the poem entitled For a Prisoner. Caged in a cold, functional cell, far from the comfort of home, with none of your own things, in a place that is grey and grim, where sounds are seldom gentle, amidst the shuffle of dumbed feet, the crossword of lost voices. The one constant note is the dead, trap-shut sound of unrelenting doors that make walls absolute. Though you have lost the outside world, may you discover the untold journey that awaits you in the inner world. May you come to recognize that though your body is imprisoned, no one can imprison your mind. May all the time you have on your hands bring you into new friendships with your mind, so that you learn to understand and integrate the darkness that brought you here. Within this limited space, may you learn to harness the stretch of time. May your compassion awaken. May you learn to recover the self you were before you lost your way, and draw from its depths some balm to heal your wounds. Behind the harsh rhythms of prison life, may you find a friend you can talk to and nurture the natural kindness to become more free in your heart and lighten the outer constraints. May your eyes look up and find the bright line of an inner horizon that will encourage and ground you for that distant day when your new feet will step out onto the pastures of freedom.
Thank you so much, Sister Mary. Such a poignant note to end our workshop on today. You referred to, may they find a friend they can talk to. They have definitely found a friend in you. It's so evident, and you've provided, I can only imagine for those in your prison that you work in, it's so evidently a blessing to have such faithful people like yourself to serve as such a witness. And prisoners, as you've noted 2 different times, are so forgotten about, and it's so great that you've provided us all with such inspiration by speaking with us today. So I thank you for sharing God's love both with us today and with all those prisoners throughout your daily ministry. I don't think I'll be able to read Matthew 25 the same way again, but we'll continue to, of course, keep yourself, all those who serve, and your prisoners in our prayers. And please, whenever restrictions lift, if you could come and join us in person at U2000 retreat, we would absolutely love to meet up with you then.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you to all those who have listened in to the workshop today, and God bless you.